Hey, hello. Oh, it's live now. Okay, that's great. We had a small technical issue, but we are here live now. So I hope everything goes well from now. So thanks everyone for being here. Welcome to the Out of the Box Developer. My name is Hugo, and I help professional web developers to design better architecture, so they can influence on important decisions and also start leading their team. And today we're gonna talk about very important topic that is also related to architecture topics, and it's how can I say it? Have been around for a long time, and we love to talk about it. That is testing our code. So I think many many of us have a lot to discuss around it, and not just the theory, but I one thing that is very interesting, that would be very interesting for everyone, would be bringing some real experience from the industry, from the market. So I will call my good friends here to help me with this discussion. So hey Manny, how are you?
Hey, Hugo, I'm good. How are you? Thank you for having me here.
Thanks, Money. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this discussion today. Will be a lot to add here and shared experience, right? I
I
think
hope so
everyone
too.
have some story about testing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's a very important and interesting topic, and yeah, looking forward to it. So great to have this topic on today's session.
Great. And I will also call my good friend Pedro Cavallero. He will be showing also some examples. He brings some examples here. He did this all this work to just to grab more hands-on experience for you guys. So, hey Pedro, how are you?
Hello, Hugo. Hello, Manny. Thank you
Hello, Pedro.
for inviting me here, Hugo. And yeah, testing is something that we do every day in our work, right? So I think this is something that we should talk about more often because it's so important to have so many stories of success and failures because of testing. So yeah, it's important to it will be a good session today.
Great. And of course, we have the our good friend and always here also helping us and bringing all his experience. And Bruno Souza. Hey, Bruno.
Hey, hello everyone. Hey Hugo, how you doing, man? Hey Manny, hey Pedro. So good to have
Hello.
you here.
Hello,
So
hello.
yes, I think that testing is one of the most important discussions that we can have for software development those days, right? Because not only we have things like test-driven development, but also testing is fundamental for the quality of the software, and we know that the higher quality the software is, the faster we can actually deliver it, right? So it's awesome. Great discussion today.
Yeah,
Great.
looking forward to it.
And before we start anything here, I want to recall this message that may be a little bit annoying that is showing up here all the time. But we go on for the next session. We're gonna be moving our sessions, live sessions, to the Monday. So expect us to be live on the next session on the March 6th, Monday. Okay, at the same time, but will be on the beginning of the week. And yeah, I hope that would be fit everyone's time schedule. And yeah, hope to see you all there. And yeah, and I hope everyone also here be able to stay and keep these discussions all along the time. So let's start with the a question that maybe is very common that I see people. I had a lot of projects that already had tests implemented on it, or project that doesn't have any tests implemented on it. And most of cases, they always put on the balance the tests. Oh, should I create tests or should I deliver fast? What should I do? So I will start with with a biggest discussion already here, maybe, right? So who wants to start with this giving point of view about that?
So what are your questions? Give me one by one. Like, tell me what are the priorities in a priority
Yes.
order. Tell me what those questions are.
Yeah, the first question is what should I implement tests and maybe not deliver in the time, or should I or not? Should I implement tests or don't implement tests and deliver whatever I have in the end?
So, firstly, actually, by saying the two things, there's a little bit of a disconnect there, because what are you going to deliver and when are you going to deliver, right? Is not determined by you. What you're going to deliver and when you're going to deliver is determined by how you start. When you start, you already create the finish, right? If you start well, you finish well. So if you're already saying, "Oh, I'm going to deliver this software," I think you're jumping the gun there. You got to understand what you're going to deliver first and how you're going to deliver it, and then the when you're going to deliver will automatically happen when you know the how and what you're going to deliver, and in between is the method in which you're going to use to deliver or develop what you're going to deliver, right? So lots of words here, but I'm coming to the point. If you don't think about testing, then your delivery is out of the box or out of the basket or in the basket way before you even started working, right? Because and you buy a lot of delivery time when you start developing tests. People think, "Oh, you're spending a lot of time, you haven't even started coding, but you're writing tests and you're thinking about tests and thinking about all the impact and dependencies and risks and all that, and how you're going to test it." But if you leave that for the afterthought, then you're actually, first of all, you might have developed an incorrect solution, so you have to go back and redo it. And secondly, you'll encounter all those issues which you may start fixing, which may be pointless because you already started off wrong. So I think I can go on talking about this from so many angles, and it'll still mean the same thing. And I think all of you, I'm hoping the audience as well, get my point, right? You buy time, you create time, you invest time when you start thinking about test, writing test, developing test. And from that test, whatever code comes out is a lot more reliable and it's ring fenced, as opposed to trying to deliver something and put delivery dates and not have a test plan and not have a test process in place. That's my very high level answer to that. Obviously, everybody else has a different perspective, and I'm happy and interested in hearing what everybody else has to say as well.
Go on, Pedro.
Okay.
I know you have something to say, so don't be shy.
For sure, sure. Yeah. Well, what I think in the a simple answer for that, I think I have someone has said before, I don't remember who, that if you are not delivering, when you are delivering code and you are not delivering the test of your code, this is not a, it's not a professional way to do the to make this delivery, you know. Because and I completely agree when Manny says that if we don't, when we do tests, we are buying time, right? Investing time, because man, we have done many different systems before, and we can see that the system is not a never a small system. It is never a small set of rules. It's never easy integrations or with third parties or something. So when we started to say, "Oh, it's just a simple thing to do," it never is when you want to, if you want to go to production with this code. So if we don't do tests from the beginning, or we are saying from the beginning, right? If you don't do tests from the beginning, in the middle we will start to get in the just like some place in the beginning, yet we're going to start to have some troubles. We're going to start to have difficulty. We're going to start debugging things because things are not working, you know. So we need to start testing from the beginning. It's very, very important. So this question just finish my case here. This question, it's not we cannot have these two options, right? It's not, oh, I will just deliver without tests, or I will do tests and don't deliver. If you don't do tests, we will not deliver, because the delivery will be really problematic for you. Maybe not on the beginning, but during the life cycle of that software. We know that software has a normally a software has a big many years of life. So yeah, when we say deliver, it's not only the day one.
Yeah, absolutely. Very well said. What do you have to say, Hugo? You're the one who started the question, so let's see.
Yeah. About that, I have an opinion, but also for myself, I think it all depends. Of course, it's very important to have quality deliveries, but how much quality is a thing that is very abstract for me. How much quality, like when we do clean architecture or clean code, how much clean do we want to deliver it? So I think I see some places that they force to have 100% of coverage of some project, and I don't see so much value by bringing 100% of coverage. Maybe 80% is good enough for that, and I would be investing a lot of time and money with something that won't be bringing so much attention. And one thing that I believe it's very important is which places we do actually want to keep tests there. I see a lot this discussion and difficulties actually, because this is for my own experiences, but some people see tests as a very simple and mechanic things, and in the end I think it's the totally opposite. There are the business rules, there are the purpose of that code, and they will actually validate that code. So it needs a much more higher level of understanding about the business rules, about what we have to deliver, and so it needs more experienced people to actually define and do good tests actually. That's also a good question, because good test. What is there good test and bad test? Maybe I will just open a bit of the room. Maybe Bruno can fill with more experiences, and yeah. But that's my point of view. Maybe there's not a very right or wrong in a very clear way. I think there's something in the middle, a bit abstract, and yeah, we have to always be balancing things. Of course, it's not like Pedro said, it's not one or another. It's a bit of one and a bit of another, maybe, because we can't have all the things we want.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think this question is so important. I think that we could probably just stay the whole day just talking about this one thing, because I see this all the time, right? Developers, imagine you coming to your boss, right, your manager, and saying, "Hey, boss, you know what? We need more time to do testing," right? And then the boss is gonna say, "Why? If you don't do testing, you deliver faster." And then you say, "Yes, okay, so of course, don't do testing then, deliver faster," right? Who in the right mind would do something that will make the projects slower or later, right? If so that is the wrong question to ask, right? Because in reality, if you as a developer, if you do really believe that if you don't test your software, you can deliver faster, right? Something is wrong. Can you see that something is wrong with that idea, right? So intuitively, we think something is wrong, right? It doesn't make sense that because I do testing takes more time. But at the same time, that's what we believe all the time, right? So here's the thing, right? So I'm going to try to see here. Maybe Hugo, if you can make me a little bit bigger there. Might be easier. No,
zoom. Yeah,
zoom in, right? Yes.
that's it. Now you're zoomed in.
All right. So here's the thing, right? So we know this thing here, right? So we know this graph, right? We know. Oh, you go move people to the side so I can make it larger. All right. So let's imagine we have a graph here, right? Here is the time that it takes to deliver the project, right? So higher, it's more time, okay? And on the bottom is the quality of software, right? So we know that the more quality the software have, right, the more time we take to deliver it, right? So we know the graph ends right here, right? So we think that the way the graph goes is like this, right? The more quality, the more time. But that's not how the graph goes. The real graph goes like this. Right? That inflection point right here is more or less 95%. 95% of what? So it's a special measurement of quality, is the amount of defects that we caught before production. Okay? So if you get 95% of bugs before production, of problems before production, this is the fastest you deliver your software. Of course, if you try to get 100%, right? If you're doing the software for the space shuttle, for example, right? Then you might need, it's going to be, the last 5% is very expensive, right? So if we see this graph here, right? So it takes less time if you have software with more quality. So the question that you're asking is the wrong question, right? Should I deliver the project faster or should I do testing? No, if you want to deliver the project faster, you do testing, right? Now the question we should ask is, okay, Bruno is saying this, but is this graph true, right? Is that a real, is that a reality? And so the research being done behind this is have tested more than 13,000 projects, right? And come up with this graph. So the chance that your project is different, it's pretty small, right? So it is a real scientific work, right? So this is the reality. So the more quality you put in your product. So that's why we do things like TDD, we do testing, we do integration testing, we do acceptance tests, whatever you do, right? To reduce the time that you deliver your software. Now, of course, like Mani was saying, right? Of course, if you're like 1 week away from delivery time, and you say, oh, we have to implement all the tests for the project because we didn't do any testing yet, right? That's a different discussion, right? But even that, if you're 1 week away from delivering the project and you never tested anything, what is the chance they're going to deliver the project in 1 week? It's zero, right? It's not going to happen anyway, right? So again, the more effort you put to increase the quality, to get bugs, the faster you're going to deliver the project. So even if there's just 1 week to deliver and there's zero tests, adding some tests, we're actually going to make the project deliver faster than you would otherwise, right? So this is the right question to ask. And when we think about this, everything we can discuss today makes a lot of sense, right? Because all of us, we want to deliver projects faster, right? We want less time. We want the least amount of time possible in our projects to get ready. Otherwise, why would we be doing it, right? So that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, I think what you explained, Bruno, actually, when I started off, I said there is a disconnect between the two components. And you actually just made that point very clear here. If it's a wrong question, it's because there's a disconnect, right? Exactly. And the analogy I want to give here is And I want to say something else after. The analogy I want to give here is, it's like saying, hey, I want to make a cake. Should I put the cake on top of the stove and not turn on the oven and not put it in the oven? Or do you want me to put the can in the oven without the ingredients in it? Because I think the can will get the tray will get heated up faster with little or no ingredients in it. And I don't know the recipe, but I'll just put something in it. You'll get something like a cake, because at least we'll have something, right? Because it'll be faster. We'll have something,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Or you take the time, you make the ingredients, but then you also have to make sure all the other things are, tested, like your oven works. You have the ingredients in the right proportion. You have the right recipe, right? You're looking at the recipe of making soup and you're going to make cake. That's not going to happen, right? You got the ingredients of the cake and you're looking at the soup, and you have never done this before, and you don't even know if the oven works, and you don't even know the combination of certain things, and you have not tested it out, right? So there are so many different angles to this. And the third thing I want to say here is, when somebody asks a question like this, it separates the wheat from the chaff. I don't know if you've heard of this saying. Means it shows their level of maturity of doing projects, of delivering projects, of working on a project, of understanding how to write code and how to write tests and how to deliver something that is robust, reliable, yeah, consistent, nearly bug free, because you can never have anything bug free in today's time. There's always something, but something that has full business coverage. That's what I always talk about. Hugo was mentioning about code coverage earlier, whether you want to have 95%, 98%, 92%. I think those percentages are a bit arbitrary discussion. What I'm looking for is 100% business coverage. Even if your code coverage is 50%, but it has 100% business coverage, that means that 50% of the code that is not covered probably is never used by the business, right? That's a chance somebody can or might be willing to take. But if it has 100% business coverage, all you're using is one REST endpoint with two methods, right? Get and post. Why would you then worry about, and you're going to do this for the lifetime of your business, then why would you have to worry about the delete, put, and all the other REST endpoint? Just an analogy. So from that point of view, this is where I come from. So thank you, Bruno, for putting that diagram in place, because that puts all the other things we said earlier into perspective.
Right. And so this whole thing about understanding, right? So, and it's interesting because when you think about the quality and how many defects we get before the software goes to production, it gets all of those things out of this discussion, right? So I have to understand what I need to do. I have to understand what the user needs. I have to understand what the business needs, right? So the more I do all those things, the faster I can actually do the project, right? And so so that's why once this whole discussion here, it really helps when you get your manager, right? Because now you're not going to ask your manager, hey boss, we need more time to deliver the project, right? It's actually going to say, hey boss, we need to do testing to deliver the project faster, right? And then your boss is going to say, wow, you're saying that if you do testing, we're going to deliver faster? Yes. Okay, so let's do it, right? Because that's what your boss needs, right? The boss wants a faster project.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head over there when you started saying other things as well, because you mentioned about requirements, business requirements. Actually, if you really see what is testing, testing is exercising the business requirements way before, or a little bit before you really start writing your code about the business requirements, right? Because testing is going through all the business requirements and saying, okay, if you have this as input and you want this as output, that means I need to check for all these other variants, right? Then if you have this as input and this as output, I need to check for all these variants, right? Okay, these are my tests. That means my test will drive to your requirements, and then we'll ring fence it with the test, and then we'll implement the code from that ring fenced test. And if you do that for every business requirement, sub requirement, scenario, use case, whatever you name it, these names are just interchangeably used. If you then satisfy all of those requirements, that's full business coverage, right? And if it's always consistently working in the same way and is reliable and is robust and doesn't fall off, there you go. You have delivered 100% business coverage. whatever test coverage you have with them, of course, then you want to do due diligence and make sure you have nearly full code coverage, right? Because then it doesn't hurt, because you've already got full business coverage. And if there are some few unit tests missing or some small, you can do that. That's a call you can make later on, because you've bought so much time already by already starting off with the right foot forward, which is implementing your business requirements immediately as tests.
Cool. So I see Max saying hello for us in the chat. Hey Max, how you doing, man? Good to see you here. So if anyone else have any questions, right, or comments about testing or about software development in general, like, just feel free to message us in the comments, right? No matter why you're watching this, it could be on LinkedIn or YouTube or whatever, right? So you can write your comment somewhere in the screen. There's a place for you to write your comment, whatever you're watching this, right?
And actually, we just get a question here. So I see Tomoe. She asked, I think she, correct me if I'm wrong. So she asked, how do you prevent the choice of quality, whether you're going to BDD, X% test coverage, version control, before you have client startup scenario? Good point. Who wants to start?
I can answer that.
Yeah.
So you don't think about anything till you have your client's requirements in hand, right? Because you have to also test the viability of your client's requirements. What if there are two requirements that are contradictory to each other, or they're wrong? You want to also you have to check the clarity of your requirements. So you don't want to think about all these quality and percentages or not. So, and actually, those things that you will do before you even start writing tests actually will determine the quality of your test. Actually, will determine the viability of those percentages of coverages that you're talking about, right? Because I have often had, I have also given a talk on this long ago, where I actually start off with testing the specification, and I'll share this resource a little bit later on. And I actually start testing the specification by taking the specification and converting into this thing called BDD. That's the Gherkin, using the Gherkin format of writing tests, given, when, then, right? Or there's other formats as well. What is it? Arrange, act, assert, and then set up, action, assert, something like that. So there's a lot of those variations. And when you start doing that, you can automatically, when you start converting the client's specification into a user story in the Gherkin format, you automatically start reading it in English, and you'll automatically start noticing, well, if the requirements are correct, you'll start noticing they're correct. They make sense. If they're not, you'll also start noticing that. So those things come first, right? So as been mentioned here, if you don't have the client's requirements and scenarios, then what are you testing? What are you building? There's nothing. You shouldn't even start, because you could start creating misconception assumptions, which could have an impact on the work you do later on. You should start with a clean slate, clean mind. Don't do anything. Wait for the scenarios to pop up. That's my answer to that. And if you guys want to add something to it, because I'm sure I must have missed something.
Yeah,
I actually shared a little bit more details here.
Yeah, I want to add for his second comment there, right? So he says, my point is, before you have any clients, you don't know what is useful, right? Should you build everything? And he himself says that's bad, right? So actually, you don't need to have clients to know what you're building, right? You have an idea. There's a problem that you're trying to solve, right? But here is my thing. I'm going to be more generic a little bit here, right? If you are a startup and you don't have clients, why are you building anything? Right? Because way before you start coding anything, you should be solving the problem in whatever way you can, right? I always tell the story of these two young guys. I don't remember the name of their startup, right? But I was watching, one day I was driving the car, I was listening to the radio, and there was an interview of these two young guys here in Brazil, in São Paulo. that, they built a company together, right? It was a delivery company to deliver supermarket things, right? And so the very first thing they did was they just built a website, a very simple website where people just go there, buy things, and they would walk to the supermarket, buy the stuff in the supermarket, and then walk to the person's house and deliver their house. There's no software, no system, no nothing, right? They first did it. They solved the problem, right? And you can say, but Bruno, that's crazy. Those guys are going to be able to do what? Like 2 customers a day. Yes, that's it. So you have clients now, right? You have someone that has a problem and you're trying to solve their problem. So now you can start figure out what needs to be built, right? So, so don't build anything if you don't have customers, right? Go have customers first.
Exactly.
Exactly.
There's a book I mentioned here the other day from the guy Silvio Meira, right? And Silvio, he's an investor, right? And so when anyone that comes to him to ask for him for investment or tips on how to do a startup, he says, "Have you read my book?" That's his first question. And the person says, "No, I have not." So go read my book, right? Because everything I know is explained there, right? So, and then if they say, "Yes, I've read your book," right? So the second question you ask is, "How many invoices have you submitted? Have you have at least one invoice already?" Right? And if he says, "No, I don't have an invoice," so go get your first invoice, right? Go sell something to someone first, right? And then you can start talking about having a startup, right? So man, this is way before testing, man. It's way, way, way before testing. First, go do something. But Bruno, I don't have any. Well, just get a friend of yours to use your software, right? To use your idea. Ask your friend what problem he has. Just get someone on the phone and they ask you a question. You go to ChatGPT, you type on ChatGPT, you get an answer, tell the person on the phone. Whatever, right? Go do something. What's his name? Paul Allen, I think, is the guy from Y Combinator. Do you guys remember Paul Graham, right? Paul Graham, I think. Yeah. So Paul something, right? I think it's Paul Graham from Y Combinator. He wrote this awesome post that I think everyone should read. So everyone that's doing a startup. He says, "Do things that don't scale." Right? How can you do anything before you do things that don't scale, right? So sorry for the real rant here, but
Yeah.
No, actually,
I remember,
go on, Pedro. You were meaning to say something.
yeah, I remember my in the company that I'm working now, they had that they started at that moment when chatbot was a thing. So every time people doing chatbots, Google is doing chatbots, Facebook was doing chatbot. Facebook was saying, "Oh, chatbot will be the thing." Do you remember that time? And they thought they say, "Oh, I will create he thought about a startup, say, "Oh, I will create a chatbot that people are gonna ask, oh, I want to get a reservation on a hotel, and I want the best choice and the less price, and I want to be in this place nearby that, and then I will have an artificial intelligence that will understand everything, and will get the right reservation for that person." And can you imagine how difficult would create this kind of artificial intelligence or chatbot or doing this kind of decisions will be really difficult. But he was a very good entrepreneur, and he thought, okay, let me try this first. And he was the chatbot. So when people start, he said, "Oh, I have a chatbot here, artificial intelligence," and people start asking things in Facebook chat. He was answering. He was in other sites of booking and go see the options and paste it to the user see, and then he realized that nobody would accept the choice of someone else choosing. Everybody want to have to want to see the choices, want to see the photos, want to see everything. Nobody will gonna use like Alexa to do this kind of thing because you could not never see the room, you know. So he in his first clients he discovered many requirements that was not he was thinking, and then he start to do stop doing chatbots, stop doing everything, and start doing a marketplace that would people want to do. So you understand? So that's
Right.
it's testing the market, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's way cheaper, right? So that's what we call the MVP, right? It's something that you get someone using what you have, right? So you test your ideas, right? You don't spend months developing something just to get to the point where no one's going to use, just to find out that no one's going to use what you have, right? So the other way around. You first test your idea, you first experiment, right? You solve a problem with someone, you do things that don't scale. I just put there on the chat the Paul Graham article, do things that don't scale, right? So no, you first go do things that don't scale, and then when you see there's a market, when you see there's people wanting it, then you can grow as much as you want.
Yeah.
Really
I think
cool.
this is
Yeah,
a
go
great
ahead,
question.
Mike.
This has been a great question, although it's a little bit of a segue into something else. It is important because like I only answered half and a part of his question, and I thought I missed something. And actually, Bruno, you answered the other part where if you translate that back into the world of testing, it is creating the problem statement, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Creating the requirements, because you are, first of all, you find the problem, you said, right? Solve a problem, right? And then somewhere around that time, you're creating a problem statement, whether you verbalize it, whether you have not written it, or whether you write it in a formal document, right? Whatever that is, it is creating the problem statement and then solving the problem manually. Don't write code to solve it, right? It's a little bit too late in the process. That's automation. Try to do it automatically, manually, sorry, one step at a time. This is what I tell my mentees as well. Do it, solve it, break the problem into smaller pieces, solve it separately, spike them, prototype them, work them out separately, and then you have a problem statement. Then you have a whole set of requirements, right? Each problem, each piece that you've broken it into a smaller piece that you made out of the bigger piece, that's your problem statement, that's your use case, that's your your requirement. And then when you combine all of them, compose all of them together, that's when you have solved that one problem. That is your one problem statement that you're solving for a client. So yeah, as a startup, that's where you want to start. If at all you have the capacity, the finance, and the resources, and you don't need too much, as Bruno was explaining, right? Do it manually, do it in the simplest, easiest way. Don't go to write code, it's a little bit later in the process. Experience that process, document that process, then start automating bit by bit the small elements of the process. This is how you must build products as well, right? This is also what MVP is, which what Bruno was mentioning earlier. I think Pedro touched upon on that as well. Minimum viable product, minimum viable, right? It doesn't say you need tests and that need to run on BDD on a CI/CD engine, right? It just needs to be a minimum viable product. Yes, you spike and you prototype first. That is also testing.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying take
Yes.
it to production. Some
That's
people
also
now take that to production, right? I know startups that take prototype to production. I won't name any one of them, but you probably already know that. That's not the right approach. But testing is prototyping, testing is spiking. Then you do the proper formal writing of your problem statement. You break your problem statements into, BDD style, Gherkin stories, user stories. Then you write your implementation from then. Then today's time, there's a lot of automation available for that. That's like somewhere in the middle of the process. But the first step in the process is understand the problem, create the problem statement out of it. Gather the scenarios, gather the requirements, test those requirements manually before you even implement it into code. Right? How does it work out? Do it on paper and pencil. Make diagrams, plan it out. Then break it into smaller chunks. Spike each of the chunk, prototype each of the chunks separately. Each of the chunk, then evolve those into proper, maybe working element implementations, but surrounded by test, and then compose them all together, combine them all together. See, when you now do it independently like that, the components are independent of each other. And there's an architectural term for that, hexagonal architecture. Ports and adapters, you can immediately start thinking, you can make those into modules that are cohesive. And if they need to interact with each other, then ports and adapters architecture come to. And so this is way into the future, right? But first, make those small components, make them independent, make them modular and cohesive. Then think about communicating with each of them, right? Then you can have all these other tests that will come into play. But first, make each of them workable on its own. So that's where unit tests will come into play, right? Then you can have a overarching acceptance test that takes all of that, and people call it integration tests. I think just two components are good enough: unit tests and acceptance. The overarching acceptance test, like a BDD style test, takes into account all the components and does the business coverage. Your business requirement and your business coverage is complete. You've delivered before time, by the way. You've
Yeah.
delivered more than you expected you would deliver if you do this way.
And I can see for that you said, every time you go and decompose the things, like, I'm about the startup. Startup is my black box, and I can see the tests that I can do around this black box. How this black box is implemented? Well, we are talking here like it could be manually, right? I don't know, but I have the tests. I can create the tests and realize what are the requirements of this black box, and then we can go and decompose it. Time using, and we can many tests this new smaller component. Every time we go into these components, we can break down it in small, even smaller ones. We can see, and then we can see, can get. So when we start decomposing, we get to the code, and when we get to the code, we still get to the code in a big block, in a big black box that we can realize what's the test. For example, on one of our services, we can create like a service. Now we came from a startup, and now we have a service inside this startup that has his own tests around it. And then you can go to this code and think of the architecture and think about the layers, or think about hexagonal architecture, or even a normal 3-layer architecture that we all know about, But even in this, wherever architecture we find, we have smaller layers that we can write code around it. And when we think about all the tests that we have in the bigger boxes, and then we can choose names. Like, for example, when I am in a smaller box that I want to test just a small part of my code that has no dependence with each other, I call it a unit test. When I want to test bigger chunks of my code that they interact with each other, but in a smaller way yet, like inside my service, I call it integration tests. But if I want to test my bigger box called service, I call it sometimes integration test, sometimes end-to-end test. It depends on on what we were talking about. So the names are different, but the idea is always similar, right? We are just getting abstraction of a thing around, making some tests around it, and start breaking it.
Great, and I think for me it was very useful that graph shared by Bruno, because for us it's really true that if we sell it this practice as I will take more time and to deliver something, they never will accept you to go this way. No, the man doesn't matter. For him, doesn't matter if it's what is behind. If you are delivering on the time that they need. So yeah, it's a mind shift. Also, I see that a lot of people has some difficulties in the beginning, but once you do more and more, it starts becoming more natural, and that will bring you also. It's like you are polishing your own skills, so it will be also productive for yourself. And I think, yeah, I was thinking just like that. Pedro showed me the chat here, and I was worried about the time to have to pass through the demonstration that Pedro prepared for us about testing our code. So yeah, that's a great opportunity now, Pedro. If you can you share your screen here?
Sure.
Sure.
Well, what I want to talk about it was when we are we started go from the top to bottom, right? And then we get to the point to have a code, and then we can think of how do we start implementing this code. And many people say about TDD and some this kind of stuff. I like the idea, the idea of having tests for everything you do. But the idea is that you create the test first, right? This is interesting. I'm a node node guy. I like to approach that we can create our code while we are creating our tests, right? So, for example, let me just let me just talk about some a small test, okay? So when we have here, let's think we have a function, okay? And this is a small one, just a function that returns a small string here, right? And I'm not going to many difficult things. I want to talk about how to test these layers
You just
together,
have to,
okay?
Pedro, can you increase the font a lot?
For sure.
32, size 32. I think if you do control plus plus, it'll increase the font size. Does that work? Or command plus plus if you have a Mac? Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
But
command
it won't be
plus.
permanent, which should be good enough for you now, right?
Better?
Yeah, this is
Yes.
good.
Sure. And then, how are we gonna test it, right? We are in Python here, so Python has some testing frameworks. Let me just choose one here. The unit test that is more common, and this unit test it uses it's the most common one in Python. We have in Java the JUnit, so there are lots of different ones, but all of them are the same idea. The idea that many said, we have like given then search or something like this, and we always have to prepare our test, prepare our scenario, run the function we want to run, and then we assert something, right? So for example, in this case, my test is really easy, right? And I can get the result from my function called bar. And in case of, as I'm here in Python, so I need to import, right? That's from bar import my code, right? And then I need to assert something. So I will gonna search, like a search equal the result with bar, for example, right? And then the best thing that the that the tests do is this green bar here. When you run, you can see the test passing or the test failing, right? For example, if let me see that let me think that I discover that, okay, this function should not return bar, should return bar one, and this is my requirement. When I write a test, it's because I discovered that something should be executed this way. It should be behaving this way, right? And then if I run it again and I discover that is wrong, so I don't get it correctly, I say, oh my God, I should have adjusted it, and then I can have it right now. But okay, but Pedro, let's think more. Of course, we have just a small function here, but in our codes, we always have functions calling functions, right? We always have functions that call functions, and we have a lot of other things that I don't know if I can show everything here that I want. Maybe we can let it to the next session. But for example, in this case, for example, if I have a function calling a function, and I need to create a test for that, right? I can just do the same, right? I say, okay, let me go to here and call this test, and I call this guy here. Oh, I need to import it, right? Cool. And then I have to search. I search. My case, the same thing, right? In this case, it's gonna be bar one Pedro, right? Is that it's working? And say, okay, Pedro, but you are testing something that is calling other function as well. This is a thing that I want to discuss with you guys. For example, this test here, when it tests just one layer, let me call this function a layer, okay? When I test it this one layer here, I call it a unit test, okay? Because I'm just testing one layer. And if I'm testing more than one layer, that's this case, right? I have one layer calling another layer. It's more like what we do, like when we divide our codes in service, repositories, and controllers, you know? When we have, for example, a service calling repository, we want to test all the code together when we are doing unit tests or not? Sometimes yes. When I have it, I call this guy here as an integration test because it is calling all the layers, right? What do you think about it? Let me ask you about this differentiation between unit test and integration test. What do you think about it?
So a unit test was testing a unit of functionality. Okay. In a sense, you can call an integration test a unit test as well if the unit is defined to within the bounding box, right? But if you have to be technical and specific, an integration test tests something where the component is on the boundary of more than one other components. in your testing, again, you have to define here, are you testing multiple integrations or are you testing a single integration point, right? Again, those are specifics. But it is arguable that you can call that as an acceptance test as well, because then you're not worried about the integrating points. You're only worried about what's the end result of this test that I'm trying to do. This component, what is it going to return? I have 5 different requirements. That's all I need in my business. It should always return those 5 different requirements when I have these 5 functions that are called. What's happening under the hood, I don't give a damn. Then you write 5 acceptance tests. You can call it unit test, integration test, whatever, but they are 5 tests that you accept for your business purpose. You write them, because what can happen is, as the software evolves, for each of the 5 tests, Pedro is so smart, he's found 5 different libraries. Now he doesn't have to maintain any of that code, and he's replaced 5 of those functions with 1 line each that calls that library, and the library gets updated regularly, and it's well tested and everything. And Pedro has reduced his workload, but the business doesn't care about that. Business has those 5 requirements for the lifetime of the business. Those 5 tests are passing. So that's the acceptance test. But that is also a unit test in some sense.
Unit test, when we
Because
think
it's the
about
unit, it is the business's unit of requirement that it's testing. But
Exactly.
it's technically called business acceptance test. So that's my answer from the angles of how I understand it. But of course, people like to call a unit test, an integration test, acceptance test, and then there's system test and functional test, security test. Those are specific.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's why I'm asking this bringing this discussion, because when we are coding here, like in developer point of view, right? Uh, when it's important to differentiate these kind of layers, these levels, right? If you're thinking about business, the business has its own unit tests, right? If we call if when we think code here, we can have we differentiate for the components that code are testing, right? So for example, in this case, I'm separating the layers of the bar and the layers of the full layer, but I'm saying that the full layer depends on the bar layer to work, right? That's what I'm saying here. I'm saying that I have a dependence. Our code have many dependence when we goes to the layers below that, you know. So that's what I wanna show here. Discuss the dependence. It's important to to developer to understand the idea of dependence inside the code, and then to discuss that all this dependency must be analyzed when we are doing them tests. I say, okay, I want to test this guy, but this guy has a dependence, so I may have an error not in my code in this layer here, but in the dependence, right? We can see that. For example, if we change here again, I will run my test again, and I will gonna see that my test about my test here will not pass. It was not because of my code, right? This is important. And I say how we handle that, right? During our tests, we handle that using what we call mocks, stubs, spies, and then we need to put these guys and make our layer to be to make our dependence to be outside of our tests. In this case, we need to put like a mock in the middle of this dependence. You know, that is interesting to say. I know that we are out of time, but when we call this kind of discussion here, I always see, for example, more junior developers that struggle with this kind of concepts, and that's why they always think that writing tests is really difficult, because when they look at the code, they see that monster with many things doing many different kinds of stuff, right? But when you need to think, you need to make it separated to be able to test it correctly.
And
I
that's
don't know
very.
if you have time.
Yeah, but we have a couple of time here. Don't worry. But that's a great example, because I was thinking on a questions here, but I thought that won't be able to ask because of the time. But actually, one side effect that we have by implementing tests and using tests, not necessarily TDD, but TDD it's a stronger practice as well, is to design. In the end, you end up starting to design your component, your application, in a better way, because it forces you to see what shouldn't or what can be inside the implementation, right? Because since, as you implemented there, since there's no explicit dependency between foo and bar, it's implementation detail. So for if the full requirements don't have this explicit, maybe only some implementation detail, and you don't have to worry about it. But once it depends on bar, and you should know about it, and you should test it separately, and have this strong dependency, you can always make it explicit, and during the test you substitute, you replace the bar with some mock or some other things, that other tools that you have to do that, and that makes your full method more isolated by the outside world. So yeah,
Exactly.
that was some side effect that I see. It's really interesting to see how you start to figure out a better design, just because if you have to implement the test, you would like to things to be more decoupled, and
Exactly.
if they can, yeah.
And another thing that what the people from TDD says is that TDD helps you to design your code. That's what the test is doing as well. Like when you start thinking, when you start testing, you can feel these dependencies, you can see these dependencies, you can when you can start write your code thinking about it, and then you create a better design. I think I feel so bad when people say to me, and we are in the stand-up meeting, and people ask, "Oh, how about your task?" He says, "Oh, I'm done coding. I just need to write tests now." I've heard that many times. I said, "Man, how can you say that you've done coding, but you just need to write that? If you haven't done that until now." And they go further. They say, "No, it's 95% done. I just need to write the tests."
That's very common.
No, man, I went to one of my colleagues, and I said, and showed to him when and he did it for some time, and he sent a PR, and I could see how coupled was the tests was, and I could show him and say, "Man, that can you see this? Can you see this couple coupling thing? This is why you didn't write a test before. If you start your code, your task is writing this test here, you would see that dependency, you would see that coupling, and you will not be writing this kind of test right now." And and now I'm gonna ask you, and you need to ask you to refactor that, and then you are now in the end of the sprint, for example.
Well, the in such cases, the test is a reflection first of all, the design of the test is the reflection of the design of the code, right?
Exactly.
Secondly, there's a term for that. Hate to use it, called retrofitting tests. It's not called test first or test driven. It's retrofitting tests. And just also, I think better, you know this, Pedro, but people seem to think and understand that TDD is a designing tool, which it really isn't, right? TDD is a tool that helps you draw those guardrails, and you, as a developer, depending on your level of experience and maturity, are able to recognize designs propping up in your in your requirements, in your implementation, in your in the initial iterations, and then you catch on to those designs, and you just, with small increments, keep evolving those designs. You don't pick a big design and try to put it into a TDD iteration, because that's going to just make uh, um, uh, extra code, more code than you ever need. So you evolve your design using TDD. That's why the thing what you're talking about, dependency injection, the cohesion, the components, all of that come into being, and they automatically get inserted and passed on to the objects, and the object creation and composition happens automatically in a better way, and they're all tested and not retrofitted and hand holding tests like the ones you will have if you do your test afterwards, test later way of coding. And then your code will also have that design, like, one depending on the others, depending on the cyclic dependency. That's what will happen when you design. I mean, it can happen worse than that. And you try to write tests after you write your code, instead of having your tests drive your code, because your test, if you use your test to drive your code, then your test will force you to do the shortest design that you would be able to get and achieve your goal, and yet have the minimum code and the simplest design, right? I always talk to people about uh, 4 rules of simple design. uh, I will introduce this the next time, uh, when you'll continue with this topic, and you'll see there's one more topic that goes very well with what you're talking about and the 4 rules of simple design. But we should talk about it another time, because otherwise you're going to go
Good
into
topic.
another second session. We can have 2 sessions in one session.
Yeah, actually,
We
we
can
are
have more
reaching that
sessions. We can have more
time.
sessions. I think it's evening for you, but it'll be like early morning for me when we finish.
Well, but yeah, but we have to. We are getting on that time that we start to share
Yeah.
some book for this session. I don't know, Bruno. Do you want to add something that you were? I didn't give you the opportunity before we start this book sharing.
No, no, it's all good. Let's share the books, right? Because
Great.
I think we're running out of time already. So that's great. So
Yeah.
thanks, Pedro, for the great presentation. That's very helpful, and that's great. No problem.
Right, yeah, and I think you had more things, right, Pedro, that you want to show here. I'm not sure if you no. Okay, sorry. But
I had, of course,
yeah, right, yeah. But
the discussion was
maybe,
really
yeah,
cool. Yeah.
great. But thanks a lot, and yeah. So who wants to start with the books?
Well, I'll start with the book. Since I already mentioned this a second ago, this is one of my most favorite books. I've bought it and I've given the author. LeanPub is a great publication. You can give the price, you can pay the price you want for a book. And this author has written this book called 4 Rules of Simple Design, which I think every developer should at least go through it once. It's a very simple read. It's very simple in content. The book is not expensive, and the book is worth having. It's an investment because you can always refer to it. And the author talks about the 4 different things that you need to first consider before you think your design that you used to build what you're building actually adheres to. And so it's this book that I would recommend everybody reading. It's a very light read. It's almost semi-technical, or maybe a little bit non-technical, but I that's my take on this, and it is very much close to what Pedro says, because one of the rules is passing tests in the book. I think it's the second rule. Yeah, and the other rule is removal of duplication, and then yet another rule is simplicity. I mean, these are not the exact words he used, but like your design must be simple. It needs to have shouldn't have duplication. It should be simple, and the test should pass, and it should express intent, right? Not just anything. It should express what it's trying to do. So if you, I mean, I don't want to add many more words to it. Let's have the next book. Whoever wants to go next.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Pedro. You're
Yeah,
sharing
the
your
books
book.
there already.
Yeah, I shared a book. I was thinking about this topic about testing because of Dave Farley. Dave Farley is the one who wrote Continuous Delivery, and he has a very good content sharing about many topics about software engineering, and one of them is testing. I enjoyed a lot, so I suggest going to see his YouTube channel as well. But he has this book that's a very good book about software engineering and has lots of topics including testers. I think I'm reading it yet. I bought some time ago. I'm still reading, but yeah, I think it's one of the best of these new books about software engineering.
Great.
Okay.
Bruno, do you want to go first? Or?
Yes. So what I want to do really quick here is let's see if I can do this. I quickly want to share, the graph that I put right here, right? Oops. Can you guys see me still?
We can see you, but not your screen.
All right. Okay. No, it's just because
I'm sharing now.
Yes, we can see a dark screen, but it's probably slowly getting populated.
Yes. Okay. So yes. So okay. So my browser froze here, so I don't know if it's going to work or not. So,
It's showing up now.
all right.
Are you able to
Okay.
navigate?
Yeah. All right. So okay. So basically, I'm just gonna. Okay. So that's the blog post that has the same graph that I put here on the back, right? So you guys want to take a look. So this blog post, it does a overview of the two books that I'm going to share, right? So if you don't want to read the books, read the blog post at least, right? And so at least you're going to have some of the information there. And so the two books that I want to suggest, right? One of them is Rapid Development, Developer Best Practice, and that's the from Steve McConnell. That is the book that started that research that shows up in the graph, and then the research continue for a little bit more. And Kappers-Jones wrote another book called Economics of Software Quality that goes into a lot of detail, right, about quality and the pricing and all that. So especially if you're working for a large company, I do suggest the larger book, right, The Economics of Software Quality, because it talks about everything that you need to know about it, how the research was done, the conclusions, all of that. And so that can be very helpful if you want to convince your boss, if you want to show your boss the best thing that you should do, right? So all the books out, I'm not sure if you're able to put there, but so Hugo disappear, right? So is Hugo putting the things there in the chat? So something happened with Hugo, right? Or just,
yeah, he just got last minute. He got
Drop it here.
Oh, he's brought back. He's brought back to us.
so
Okay.
I'm putting the books in the chat here, right? So Rapid Development and Economics of Software Quality. I just put those two books there, and I'm also going to put the link to the one chart. That's the blog post. So if you don't want to read the book, you can read the blog post. But if you want to convince your boss, you're probably going to have to read the books.
That's a good one. And And yeah, from my side, I believe that it's very difficult to actually have your greenfield project that you can start with all the tests already done, or you get some project that already have all the tests. In many cases, you get some projects that don't have those tests, and you have to implement them to start making them better than where it is. So this book is a really good one. Working effectively with legacy code by Michael Feathers. It's really good one because it also he describes the situation as it is, as we see during the project. Oh, you have this situation where if you change something, it will break a lot of other places. So how can you deal with this situation and so on? It's a really interesting one and really fun to read because yeah, you can you can see some of your real situation there. So that's a really good one. I recommend, since we are talking about testing, that's some ways to escape those situations and start creating tests for your project. So yeah, and so thanks a lot, everyone. Does anyone want to bring some last words here before we end the session?
I suggest to put the line again with the next session.
Oh,
So people
you're right.
remember.
I was thinking about that. Yeah. So just a quick reminder, this will be the last session on Friday. We'll start to have our live session on Monday. And the next Monday that we will run our live session will be on the March 6th, okay? Same time, 7 p.m. in Brazil and 10 p.m. EST, okay? So I hope to see you all. Keep seeing you all. Yeah.
We're still doing 1 week yes, 1 week no, right? So so we're gonna skip next week and then we start next Monday, the other Monday, March 6th, right? So we meet you guys here every other week, and or like Monday likes to say, right, twice a month, right?
Bi-monthly. Yeah, that's a tricky word actually.
Bi-monthly, right? Yeah, bi-monthly means twice a month and not every 2 months, right?
Yeah.
Great. And yeah, so that's it. Today's session, we are done. And yeah, thanks a lot, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
See ya. Bye bye.
See ya.